The air in the apartment was thick with the scent of jasmine tea, and the weight of words I couldn't take back. I stood by the window, heart pounding like a drum in a storm, staring at Cassie's shadow as it danced across the hardwood floor. I just told her my deepest secret, and now the world felt like it was teetering on the edge of something I couldn't name. "I'm a lesbian," I'd said, my voice barely above a whisper, the words slipping out after months of hiding. Cassie, my roommate of 2 years, had frozen mid-sip, her blue eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. Then, with a smirk that could unravel anyone, she leaned forward and said, "Prove it. Prove it." The words hit like a lightning bolt, electrifying the space between us. Cassie wasn't just my roommate. She was my opposite, bold where I was cautious, a wildfire to my steady stream. We'd met in a cramped lecture hall at NYU, bonded over late-night pizza and shared complaints about our professors, and ended up sharing this tiny Brooklyn apartment. She was straight, or so she'd always claimed, with a string of boyfriends who never lasted. But now her challenge hung in the air, daring me to cross a line I'd only dreamed of. "Prove it how?" I asked, my voice shaking, though I tried to mask it with a laugh. My hands fidgeted with the hem of my sweater, betraying my nerves. Outside, the city buzzed with life cars honking, streetlights flickering, but in here, it was just us, the world shrinking to the space between her teasing grin and my racing heart. "Kiss me," she said, her tone half joking, half serious, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't read. "If you're so sure, Elena, kiss me and mean it." I froze. Cassie was testing me, wasn't she? This was just her way, always pushing boundaries, always playing games. But the way her lips parted slightly, the way her gaze lingered on mine, felt like more than a game. It felt like a door cracking open, one I wasn't sure I was brave enough to walk through. "I'm not joking, Elena," she added, stepping closer. Her bare feet made soft thuds on the floor, and I could smell her lavender shampoo, familiar yet suddenly intoxicating. "You've been hiding this for how long? Show me who you are." My breath hitched. I'd spent years burying my feelings, convincing myself that loving women was something to keep locked away, especially from someone like Cassie, someone who seemed so untouchably straight, so effortlessly magnetic. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I'd learned to keep my head down, to smile and nod when my family praised good Christian values. Coming out to myself had been hard enough. Coming out to Cassie was like jumping off a cliff. But her challenge wasn't just about me. It was about her too. I saw it in the way her fingers twitched, the way her bravado faltered for a split second. Was she curious? Scared? Or was she just messing with me, like the time she dared me to eat a ghost pepper and laughed when I cried? "Cassie, this isn't funny," I said, my voice low, but I didn't step back. I couldn't. Not when she was so close, her warmth pulling me in like gravity. "Who said I'm laughing?" she replied, her voice softer now, almost tender. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she just realized she wanted to solve. "I'm serious, Elena. Show me." I don't know what possessed Meme, but it was the way her eyes softened, or the way the city lights painted her face in hues of gold and shadow. But I leaned in, my heart thundering, and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like testing the surface of a frozen lake. Her lips were warm, tasting faintly of the cherry lip balm she always wore. For a moment I thought she'd pull away, laugh it off, call it a dare well done. She didn't. Cassie kissed me back, her hands finding my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. The world tilted and I was falling not off a cliff, but into something deeper, something I hadn't dared to imagine. Her fingers dug into my sweater, and I felt her breath catch, a small surprise sound that made my heart soar. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathless, staring at each other like we'd just discovered a new language. "Well," Cassie said, her voice shaky but laced with that familiar mischief, "that was unexpected." I laughed, a nervous, bubbling sound, and ran a hand through my hair. "You dared me," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice betrayed the storm inside me. "What now?" Her smile faded, replaced by something raw, something real. "I don't know," she admitted, and for the first time, Cassie, the girl who always had an answer, looked lost. "But I want to find out." That night, we didn't talk about it again. We cleaned up the tea mugs, turned on a movie, and sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between us charged with unspoken questions. But the air had changed, like a storm had passed through and left everything brighter, sharper. I couldn't stop stealing glances at her, wondering what she was thinking. Wondering if I just ruined everything or started something new. The next morning, Cassie was up before me, her usual routine of blasting pop music while making coffee. "Morning, sleepyhead," she called, tossing a bagel at me as I shuffled into the kitchen. Her grin was the same, but her eyes held something a flicker of nervousness, maybe, or excitement. I caught the bagel and smiled back, my heart doing somersaults. "So," she said, leaning against the counter, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. "About last night." My stomach dropped. Here it was, the moment she'd say it was a mistake, a dare gone too far. I braced myself, clutching the bagel like a lifeline. "I don't regret it," she said, her voice steady but quiet. I've never thought about this before. About us. Like that. Us. I echoed, my voice barely audible. The word felt fragile, like it could shatter if I held it too tightly. "Yeah," she said, biting her lip. "I mean, I'm straight. Or I thought I was. But that kiss." She trailed off, her cheeks flushing. "It wasn't just a dare, was it?" I shook my head, my throat tight. "Not for me." She nodded like she was piecing something together. "Okay," she said finally. Let's figure this out. Together." The words were simple, but they lit up the room, brighter than the morning sun. I didn't know what together meant. Not yet. But it was enough to make me feel like I could breathe again. For the first time I wasn't hiding. Not from her. But as the days passed, I started to notice the cracks. Cassie was her usual self, laughing, teasing, filling the apartment with her boundless energy, but there were moments when she'd go quiet, her eyes distant, like she was wrestling with something she couldn't name. I wanted to ask, to push, but I was terrified of breaking whatever fragile thing was growing between us. One night we went to a bar with some friends, a dive in Williamsburg with sticky floors and neon signs. Cassie was in her element, charming everyone with her quick wit and easy smile. But when a guy started flirting with her, buying her drinks and leaning too close, I felt a pang I couldn't ignore. She laughed at his jokes, but her eyes kept finding mine across the room, like she was checking if I was still there. Later, as we walked home, the city alive with late-night energy, she slipped her hand into mine. It was casual, almost accidental, but it sent a jolt through me. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yeah." I lied, my heart racing. "You." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stopped walking, turning to face me under a flickering streetlight. "I don't know what I'm doing, Elena," she said, her voice raw. "But I know I don't want to lose you." Her words were a lifeline, but they also carried a weight, a warning that this wasn't going to be easy, that we were stepping into uncharted territory. I squeezed her hand, my heart full and terrified all at once. "Then don't," I said simply. We walked the rest of the way in silence, her hand in mine, the city humming around us. I didn't know where this was going, but for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The weeks that followed felt like walking a tightrope, exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Cassie and I didn't talk about the kiss again, not directly, but it lingered in every glance, every brush of our hands as we passed dishes in the kitchen or shared a blanket on the couch. The apartment, once a safe haven of routine, now buzzed with a new kind of energy, electric, fragile, and impossible to ignore. I caught myself watching her more than I should, memorizing the way her laugh lit up her face, the way her fingers tapped out rhythms on the counter when she was lost in thought. Cassie was a whirlwind, always moving, always talking, but now I noticed the pauses, moments when her eyes lingered on me a second too long, or when her voice softened like she was afraid of saying too much. One rainy afternoon, we were sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by takeout containers and half-finished sketches for her graphic design project. The city outside was gray, the patter of rain against the windows a steady heartbeat. I was reading or pretending to when Cassie nudged me with her foot. "Hey," she said, her voice playful but edged with something serious. "You ever think about what it'd be like to just run away? Leave all this behind?" I looked up, surprised. "What, like quit school and join a circus?" She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No, I mean, start over. Somewhere new. Where nobody knows you, and you can be whoever you want." Her words hung heavy, and I wondered if she was talking about herself or us. You can be whoever you want here, Cass, I said carefully. You don't need to run. She stared at the ceiling, her fingers tracing the edge of a sketchpad. Maybe. But it's hard, you know? Figuring out who that is. I wanted to ask what she meant, to dig into the vulnerability she was showing. But before I could, she sat up, her mood shifting like a switch. Come on, she said, grabbing my hand. Let's do something stupid. Stupid how? I asked, but I was already letting her pull me to my feet, her enthusiasm infectious. We ended up in Central Park, drenched from the rain, racing each other to the Bethesda fountain like kids. Cassie won, of course, her laughter echoing as she spun around, arms outstretched, water dripping from her hair. You're too slow, Elena, she teased, but when she grabbed my hand to pull me into a hug, her touch lingered, warm against the chill of the rain. For a moment we stood there, soaked and breathless, her face inches from mine. I thought she might kiss me again, and my heart leaped at the possibility. But then she stepped back, her smile faltering. We should get out of the rain, she said, and the moment was gone. Back at the apartment, we changed into dry clothes and curled up under a blanket, the tension between us thicker than ever. I wanted to ask her what she was feeling, what this was, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead I asked, you ever think about that night? The dare. Her eyes flicked to mine, and for a second I saw fear, or maybe it was longing. All the time, she admitted, her voice barely audible. It's like, I don't know who I am without it now. Her words hit me like a tidal wave, and I reached for her hand, my heart pounding. Cassie, you don't have to have it all figured out. Neither of us does. She squeezed my hand, her thumb brushing over my knuckles. But what if I mess this up? She whispered. What if I hurt you? The vulnerability in her voice broke something in me, and I leaned closer, my forehead resting against hers. You won't, I said, though I wasn't sure if I was convincing her or myself. We'll figure it out. Together, remember. She nodded, her breath warm against my cheek, and for a moment I thought we'd kiss again. But then her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. It was her mom, calling from Connecticut, and Cassie's face tightened as she answered. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw the way her shoulders slumped, the way her voice grew clipped, defensive. When she hung up, she didn't look at me. Family stuff, she muttered, tossing her phone onto the couch. They want me to come home for the weekend. You okay? I asked, sensing the shift in her mood. Yeah, she said, but it was a lie and we both knew it. She stood, pacing the small living room. It's just, they don't get me. Never have. And now with this, she gestured vaguely between us, her voice cracking. I don't know how to explain it to them. Or to myself. You don't have to explain anything, I said, standing to face her. Not to them, not to anyone. This is about you, Cass. What you want. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I thought she'd say something that would change everything. But then she shook her head, a small, sad smile on her lips. You make it sound so easy, she said. It's not, I admitted. But it's worth it. That night, she slept in my bed, not hers, curled up against me like she was afraid I'd disappear. It wasn't romantic. Not yet, just two people holding on to each other in the dark, trying to make sense of something bigger than themselves. I listened to her breathing, steady and soft, and wondered how long we could keep this up before the world demanded answers we didn't have. The next day, Cassie left for Connecticut, promising to be back by Sunday. I spent the weekend alone, the apartment too quiet without her laughter, her music, her chaos. I tried to focus on schoolwork, but my mind kept drifting to Herto, the way her hand felt in mine, the way her voice softened when she said my name. When she returned, something was different. She was quieter, her smiles forced, her eyes avoiding mine. How was it? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Fine, she said, but her tone was clipped, and she busied herself unpacking, avoiding my gaze. I wanted to push, to ask what had happened, but I didn't. Instead, I watched her move through the apartment like a ghost, and I felt the distance growing between us, cold and heavy. That night, I found her on the fire escape, staring at the city lights. I climbed out to join her, the metal creaking under my weight. Cassie, I said softly, talk to me. She didn't look at me, but her voice was raw when she spoke. My mom asked if I was seeing someone. I didn't know what to say. I mean, what are we, Elena? What am I supposed to tell them? Her words stung, but I understood. I'd faced those questions too, the ones that demanded labels and explanations when all you had was a feeling you couldn't name. You tell them whatever feels true, I said. Or you don't tell them anything. It's your choice. She turned to me then, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'm scared, she admitted. I've never felt like this before. Not with anyone. And it's messing with my head. I reached for her hand, my heart aching. You don't have to do this alone, I said. I'm here. For a moment she just looked at me, her expression a mix of fear and hope. Then she leaned in, kissing me softly, her lips trembling against mine. It wasn't like the first kiss, bold and daring. This one was fragile, like a promise neither of us was sure we could keep. When she pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine, her breath shaky. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. But I don't want to stop. The weeks after that kiss on the fire escape were a blur of stolen moments and unspoken questions. Cassie and I danced around the truth, neither of us brave enough to name what was growing between us. We'd hold hands under the table at coffee shops, share lingering glances when we thought the other wasn't looking, but we never talked about it, not really. It was like we were building a house of cards, beautiful but fragile, one wrong move away from collapse. I tried to focus on school, on my art history classes and the internship I'd landed at a gallery in Chelsea, but Cassie was everywhere, in the smell of her shampoo in the bathroom, the playlist she left blasting, the way her laugh could pull me out of any spiral. She was trying too, throwing herself into her design projects, staying out late with friends, but I could see the strain in her eyes, the way she'd go quiet when her phone buzzed with calls from home. One night we went to a queer art event in the East Village. A pop-up gallery filled with vibrant paintings and pulsing music. I'd hesitated to invite her, worried it would be too much too soon, but she'd insisted, her eyes bright with curiosity. I want to see your world, Elena, she'd said, and I couldn't say no. The gallery was crowded, the air thick with perfume and wine. Cassie stayed close, her shoulder brushing mine as we moved through the exhibits. I pointed out a paintinga swirl of blues and reds, two figures intertwined in a way that felt achingly familiar. What do you see? I asked, my voice soft. She studied it for a long moment, her expression unreadable. It's raw, she said finally. Like they're holding on to each other because they're scared of what happens if they let go. Her words hit too close to home, and I swallowed hard, nodding. Yeah, I said. Exactly. Later we ended up at a quiet bar nearby, sharing a booth and a pitcher of sangria. The conversation flowed easily at first, art, music, the ridiculous professor we both hated, but then Cassie leaned back, her eyes searching mine. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? She asked. Like you're playing a role, and you don't know how to stop? I knew exactly what she meant. Growing up, I'd worn a mask for so long, good daughter, good student, good girl, that I'd almost forgotten who I was underneath. Coming out had been like shedding that skin, but it wasn't easy. And I knew Cassie was grappling with something similar. All the time, I admitted. But it gets better. When you let yourself be honest. She nodded, but her eyes were distant, like she was seeing something I couldn't. My family. They're traditional. Like church every Sunday traditional. If I told them about this about us, they'd lose it. You don't have to tell them, I said, though the words felt hollow. I wanted her to be free to be herself, but I knew how hard it was to face that kind of judgment. I'd lost friends, cousins when I came out. I didn't want that for her, but I also didn't want to be her secret forever. I know, she said, her voice small. But I want to. Eventually. I need time. I reached across the table, taking her hand. Take all the time you need, I said, and I meant it even if it hurt. The rest of the night was lighter, filled with laughter and stories, but the weight of her words lingered. When we got home, she kissed me again, slow and deliberate, like she was trying to memorize the feel of it. I kissed her back, pouring everything I felt into hope, fear, love, because I was falling for her hard and fast, and it terrified me. The next morning I woke to find her gone, a note on the counter. Had to run to class. Dinner tonight. I smiled, but the unease in my chest didn't fade. Something was shifting, and I wasn't sure if it was pulling us closer or tearing us apart. That evening, Cassie came home with a bottle of wine and a nervous smile. I want to cook for you, she said, and I laughed. knowing her cooking skills were limited to pasta and scrambled eggs. But I helped her chop vegetables, our hands brushing as we moved around the tiny kitchen, and for a while it felt like everything was okay. Over dinner, she told me about her day. Her voice bright but her eyes guarded. I wanted to ask about her family, about the fear I'd seen in her, but I didn't. Instead, I told her about the gallery, about a new exhibit I wanted us to see together. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, and I knew she was holding something back. Later, as we washed dishes side by side, she spoke so quietly I almost missed it. I told my sister about us. I froze, the sponge in my hand dripping onto the counter. What? Not everything, she said quickly, her cheeks flushing. Just that I'm figuring things out. With you. My heart raced, a mix of hope and dread. What did she say? Cassie hesitated, her hands still in the soapy water. She didn't get it. Said I'm just confused, that I'll figure it out when I meet the right guy. Her voice cracked and she looked away. She doesn't know me, Elena. Not really. I reached for her, pulling her into a hug. She will, I said, though I wasn't sure if it was true. Give her time. Cassie clung to me, her face buried in my shoulder, and I felt her tremble. I don't want to lose you, she whispered, echoing the words she'd said weeks ago under the streetlight. You won't, I said, but the words felt heavier now, like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. The next few days were tense. Cassie quieter than usual, her phone buzzing with texts she didn't answer. I tried to give her space, but it was hard when every moment without her felt like a piece of me was missing. One night I came home to find her packing a bag, her movements frantic. Where are you going? I asked, my stomach dropping. Home, she said, not meeting my eyes. Just for a few days. I need to figure this out. Cassie, talk to me, I pleaded, stepping closer. Don't shut me out. She stopped, her hands shaking as she zipped the bag. I'm not, she said, but her voice was strained. I need to know who I am, Elena. And I can't do that here, with you looking at me like that. Like what? I asked, my voice breaking. Like I'm your everything, she said, her eyes meeting mine at last. Because I don't know if I can be. Her words cut deeper than I expected, and I stepped back, my chest tight. Okay, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Go. Figure it out. She left that night, and the apartment felt like a tomb without her. I sat on the couch, staring at the city lights, wondering if I'd pushed her too far too fast. I wanted to believe she'd come back, that she'd choose us, but doubt crept in like a thief, stealing the hope I'd been holding on to. The days without Cassie were endless, each one stretching into the next like a gray, unbroken horizon. I threw myself into work at the gallery, cataloging pieces and writing descriptions, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment we'd shared, the kisses, the laughter, the way her hand fit perfectly in mine. I checked my phone obsessively, hoping for a text, a call, anything to tell me she was okay, that we were okay. She'd been gone 4 days when I got a message. I'm sorry. Need more time. Talk soon. It was short, impersonal, and it gutted me. I typed a dozen replies, angry ones, pleading ones, casual ones, but sent none. Instead, I sat on the fire escape, the city sprawling below me, and let myself cry for the first time since she left. I thought about calling my mom, someone who'd been through her own battles with acceptance when I came out, but I didn't. This wasn't just about me, it was about Cassie, and I had to let her find her own way, even if it meant losing her. When she finally came back, it was late on a Sunday night, the apartment dark except for the glow of a single lamp. I was on the couch, sketching aimlessly, when I heard her key in the lock. My heart leaped, but I stayed still, afraid to hope. She looked tired, her hair messier than usual, her eyes red-rimmed. Hey, she said, dropping her bag by the door. Hey, I replied, my voice cautious. You okay? She nodded, but it was unconvincing. She sat on the couch, leaving a careful distance between us. I talked to my family, she said, her voice low. It didn't go well. My stomach twisted. What happened? She laughed, a bitter sound. My mom cried. My dad yelled. They think it's a phase, that I'm confused because of college, because of you. She looked at me then, her eyes full of pain. They told me to come home to fix this. Like I'm broken. You're not broken, I said fiercely, reaching for her hand. She didn't pull away, but her fingers were limp, like she was too tired to hold on. You're perfect, Cassie. Exactly as you are. She shook her head, tears spilling over. I don't know who I am, Elena. I thought I did, but now. Everything's a mess. I wanted to fix it, to take away her pain, but I didn't know how. So I just held her hand, letting the silence speak for us. After a while she leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and we stayed like that, the city humming outside, the weight of her words settling between us. The next few weeks were a delicate dance. Cassie was back, but she wasn't fully there, her laughter quieter, her smiles rarer. I tried to give her space, but it was hard when every part of me wanted to pull her close, to tell her I loved her. Because Dee hadn't said it, but I felt it, deep and undeniable. One night, we went to a rooftop party hosted by a friend from school. The city skyline sparkled below, and the air was warm, filled with laughter and music. Cassie seemed lighter, dancing with friends, her smile almost like her old self. I watched her, my heart aching with how much I wanted this to be enough, for her to be happy. But then I saw her talking to a guy, a friend of a friend, his hand on her arm, her laugh too bright. Jealousy flared hot and sharp, and I hated myself for it. She wasn't mine, not really, not when she was still figuring herself out. But when she caught my eye across the crowd, her expression softened, and she left him to come to me. You're quiet tonight, she said, nudging my shoulder. Just thinking, I said, forcing a smile. You having fun? She studied me, her eyes searching. Not as much as I'd like, she said, her voice low. Dance with me. I hesitated, but her hand was already in mine, pulling me to the makeshift dance floor. The music was slow, a soft melody that wrapped around us like a cocoon. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt her breath against my neck, steady and warm. I'm trying, Elena, she whispered. I'm trying so hard to be brave. You are brave, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Braver than you know. She pulled back to look at me, her eyes shining. I don't deserve you, she said, and before I could argue she kissed me, right there in front of everyone. It wasn't tentative or secret, it was bold, unapologetic, and it set my heart on fire. The rest of the night felt like a dream, her hand in mine, her laughter real again. But when we got home, the weight returned. She sat on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, and I knew something was coming. I'm going back to Connecticut next weekend, she said, not looking at me. For good. My heart stopped. What? Not forever, she added quickly, her voice shaking. Just for a while. I need to fix things with my family. I need to figure out how to be me without hurting them. I wanted to beg her to stay, to tell her we could face it together, but I saw the resolve in her eyes. This wasn't about might, was about her, and what she needed to survive. Okay, I said, my voice barely audible. But you'll come back? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I promise. The days before she left were bittersweet. We spent every moment together, cooking meals, watching movies, lying in bed talking about everything and nothing. I told her I loved her, the words slipping out one night as we lay in the dark. She didn't say it back, but she held me tighter, and that was enough. The morning she left, I helped her pack, my hands shaking as I folded her clothes. At the door she kissed me long and slow, like she was trying to memorize me. I'll be back, she said, her voice fierce. This isn't the end. I nodded, unable to speak, and watched her walk away, the door closing with a soft click that echoed in my chest. The apartment was a ghost town without Cassie. Her side of the closet was empty, her music gone, her laughter a memory that haunted every corner. I kept busy, work, school, friends, but nothing filled the hole she'd left. I'd see her in every blonde head on the subway, every laugh in a crowded bar, and each time my heart would leap, only to crash when I realized it wasn't her. She texted sometimes, short updates about her life in Connecticut, family dinners, old friends, a new job at a local design firm. She sounded okay but distant, like she was writing from another world. I replied with equal care, keeping things light, afraid to push too hard. But every night I'd lie awake, wondering if she'd found herself, if she'd found a way to be happy without me. Months passed and I started to heal, or at least to pretend I was. I went on a few dates, met other women at queer events, but none of them were Cassie. None of them made my heart race the way she did. None of them understood me with a single glance. I wondered if I'd always compare everyone to her, If she'd be the one I'd never get over. One spring evening I was at the gallery, setting up for a new exhibit, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Cassie. In the city. Can we talk? My hand shook as I typed back, telling her to meet me at the apartment. When I got home she was there, sitting on the steps outside, her hair shorter, her eyes brighter than I remembered. She stood when she saw me, a nervous smile on her lips. "Hey," she said like no time had passed. "Hey," I replied, my voice catching. "You look good." She laughed, a real laugh, the kind I'd missed so much. "You too." We went upstairs, the apartment feeling alive again with her in it. She sat on the couch, her hands clasped in her lap, and I could see she was nervous, maybe as much as I was. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, her voice steady but soft. "About me. About us." My heart pounded, but I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I told my family everything," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "About you, about how I feel. It was messy, there were tears, arguments, all of it. But I told them I'm not straight. I don't know if I'm a lesbian or bi or something else, but I know I love you." The words hit me like a wave, washing away months of doubt. "You love me?" I asked, my voice trembling. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I always did. I was just too scared to say it. Too scared to be it. But I'm not anymore." I crossed the room in 2 steps, pulling her into my arms. She clung to me, her breath hitching, and I felt the pieces of myself falling back into place. "I love you too," I whispered, my lips against her hair. I never stopped. We kissed, and it was like coming home, familiar, yet new, filled with all the things we'd been too afraid to say. When we pulled back she was smiling, her eyes bright with hope. "I'm staying," she said. "For good this time. If you'll have me." "Always," I said, and I meant it. The days that followed were a new beginning. Cassie moved back in, her things filling the apartment again, her laughter bringing it to life. We took it slow, rebuilding what we'd lost, but it was different now, stronger because we'd both fought for it. We went to queer events together, held hands in public, kissed under the city lights without fear. Her family was still a work in progress, but she was talking to them, slowly bridging the gap. One night we sat on the fire escape, the city sprawling below us, the stars faint but visible. She leaned against me, her hand in mine, and I felt a peace I hadn't known was possible. "You know," she said, her voice soft, "I used to think love was supposed to be easy, but this is better. It's real." I kissed her temple, my heart full. "It's worth it," I said, echoing the words I'd told her months ago. And it was. Every moment of doubt, every tear, every fear, it had led us here to this. We weren't perfect, and neither was the world around us. But we had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.